Accepting a relationship is over is not always easy, but it is wise. First love ends in tragedy.
You don't want me anymore? Well, no one's gonna get you. Bang.
A broken promise ends with a bullet.
He took everything from her, and for that, he had to pay.
And a mom plays with her boy toy.
You're a man.
She'd mentally tortured him and got this narcissist stranglehold on him.
2014 in Loxahatchee, Florida. Online battlefields bring 19-year-old James Berry and 18-year-old Melanie Eam together.
Melanie and James bonded and fell in love over computer games.
Should I move in now?
No, let your minions take the damage.
It was a young love, but I think it was like a pure love.
Yes!
It was a committed relationship.
James was described by everyone that knew him as a super nice guy.
The young lovers are equally crazy about gaming.
It's kind of a role-playing game. He and Melanie would spend hours playing this game.
The only thing James likes more
What?
is his BFF, Jeff,
Back to the fountain, Hellraiser.
who also lives with James's family.
Jeff and James were best friends, and Melanie was his first girlfriend.
Bang, you're dead. Ugh. Every time.
James played in his bedroom with Jeff, and if Melanie was playing, all three played together.
You always win.
James is the perfect team player.
Had to. It's study time.
Not just fast on the keyboard, he also helps Melanie focus on her studies.
Study time. Right, I get it. What? I'll see you tomorrow.
Melanie needed a job, he helped her find a job. Melanie needed to graduate high school, he helped her get a GED. So here's a kid who just wanted to help people.
Melanie is welcomed into the family by James's mom and stepfather.
Hey, I'm starving.
They're being left.
Hands off.
Melanie, hi.
Are you staying for dinner?
If that's not too much trouble.
Of course not.
Melanie spent much of her time at James's house.
Can I help?
She was the kind of girl that you would want your son to have as a girlfriend. They loved her like a daughter.
How would you feel if Melanie stayed for breakfast?
That's fine.
Thanks.
She spent time at his house, overnight stays. It was part of their relationship. It was approved by the parents.
But with everyone under the same roof, there's pressure on James to choose between his girlfriend and his best friend.
What are you doing?
I don't like being left alone.
Melanie couldn't stand James's best friend, Jeff. In fact,
Seriously?
she couldn't stand really any friend that he had.
She had a big problem.
Mel, I think she's a bit crazy. I know she can be, but no, dude, she's dark. Like, real dark. I don't want to be around her. I love her.
It is a bad sign when your friends don't want to be around your girlfriend. That's a red flag for anybody. What is it about her that they don't like? They're getting a bad vibe from this girl. Why? Jeff has this huge fish tank with some very expensive fish in it. What does she do? She pours bleach into the water of the fish tank, murdering $3,000 worth of fish.
It screamed of future problems. The message is, look what I can do, and you might be next.
No. No. No! How could this happen?
She wanted to be the only person in his life. And when I say only, I mean only.
And it works. Jeff gets a message,
She did this.
and he hightails it out of there.
James, can we just talk, please?
Jeff may have moved out,
I just don't understand how you could do that.
I'm sorry.
but if Melanie thinks she has James to herself, she's in for a shock.
Come on. Mel, take your bag. Take the bag. Mel, take it.
If you leave me, I don't know what I'll do to myself.
Mel, come on. Take the bag.
I'll leave town.
Yeah, that's probably for the best.
Melanie had a big investment being seen as
Come on, come on.
a tiny, harmless, sweet woman. But inside was a colossal demon.
2016 in Loxahatchee, Florida. Young love isn't running smoothly for 20-year-old Melanie Eam and her boyfriend, James Berry. Both are lonely and miserable after their breakup.
A couple months go by and James is feeling, well, he's feeling lonely. So he calls her up and then he ultimately says, hey, why don't you come back?
I can't wait to see you.
Let's see if we can work this out.
James was so nice, and he seemed to look at her through rose-colored glasses.
Melanie is welcomed back into the family circle.
It's good to have you back.
I missed your food. Yeah.
Thank you.
She is good.
Yeah.
It's as if nothing has changed.
It was really nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good night.
Good night.
Night, James.
And unfortunately for Melanie, nothing has. The night of November 17th, 2016, Jeff wants to come over.
Who was that?
Jeff's coming over. You don't have to see him.
So you want me to go?
Please don't start.
Melanie could not tolerate being rejected.
The friends play computer games into the night
I know.
What about the gym?
until they have a virtual visitor.
Look who just joined us. Hellraiser.
Her choice of username was Hellraiser, and her avatar was a female devil holding her own bleeding heart out of her chest. That was the real Melanie.
I'm gonna take that as my cue for power nap.
The virtual gate crashing is too much for James. It was a mistake to invite Melanie back, so he ends it once and for all.
James broke up very gently with Melanie via computer chat. That's not so unusual, especially for young people.
And it was very sweet, and it was very sincere. He was just explaining, we've tried, and we can't do it.
It's over with Melanie. Good choice.
But it's not over as far as Melanie's concerned.
So just after midnight, Melanie comes to the door.
What are you doing here?
You said we could talk.
Now?
Yeah.
James lets her in.
Mel, please, let's talk tomorrow.
They're in the kitchen, and they're talking.
Do you love me?
Honestly, no.
She becomes enraged, opens the drawer, pulls out a 13-inch kitchen knife.
Mel, come on.
It's almost like she was inside that online game, and she was one of those characters, and she was destroying this man.
Melanie slashes 6 superficial wounds as James tries to protect himself.
Melanie had 6 times to say to herself, no, I'm not going to do this. This is wrong. She didn't. She was working up the courage to plunge the knife in his chest.
This man she claimed to love so much, she stuck a knife into his heart. You don't want me anymore, James? Well, you know what? No one's gonna get you. Bang. Melanie takes off after this savage attack. James rushes down the hall as fast as he can.
James?
He drops to the floor. The knife falls out of his chest.
Help! Help!
If he doesn't get help soon, he's dead.
James! Call 911. Get him on the bed.
My son is being stabbed.
James's stepfather tries CPR.
The first time he tries to blow into James's mouth, the breath comes out through his chest. It was just horrific, and James died on the scene.
He's not breathing.
There's no mystery to this tragedy. All thoughts turn to James's girlfriend, the fish tank, the separation, and the chat room breakup.
We wanted you to come down to the station.
No.
Well, will you talk to us here?
Melanie has some explaining to do.
Did you stab him?
Yes.
Melanie told the detective she was upset because James didn't love her.
I was really angry that he ended our relationship. On social media.
Her fury came from not being told personally.
As if that justified killing him.
In 2019, Melanie Eam is convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 50 years in prison.
On first glance, you would never think that she would be capable of much more than a traffic ticket, much less a heinous murder.
James never saw the danger he was in. Melanie was pretty. but she was pretty poison. She lost everything.
I'm not discussing it.
It was revenge. I want you dead forever.
In Salt Lake City, Utah, in 1911, the man about town is Ross Bonney.
Ross Bonney was a well-known guy in Salt Lake.
Welcome to the Raleigh.
Wow, hello.
A really charming guy and had a successful career.
The 31-year-old lawyer and hotel entrepreneur has help.
Our housekeeper will show you to your room.
33-year-old Amy Hill.
He would introduce people to her as the housekeeper.
Here, let me.
Oh, no, you shouldn't.
Don't worry, it's part of her job.
Thank you.
All of his neighbors thought of her as like a live-in servant.
Swept her off her feet was coined when Amy met Ross.
Just 1 year prior, Amy was a doting mother of 4 children, whom she promptly abandoned, along with her husband, to run away with Ross.
She just fell under his spell. It was like she was hypnotized.
Amy pays a high price in shame and secrecy.
Women of polite society simply did not leave their families.
Do you mean it?
Ross promises to make it right. Once he establishes his law practice.
I'm afraid I'll end up homeless.
He really got himself together, and he became a well-respected, wealthy lawyer.
That is not gonna happen.
Really? Judges liked him, the lawyers that he worked with liked him.
Trust me.
And his clients like him too. A long line of vulnerable divorcees.
Ross was very successful as a divorce attorney. He really was quite good. And he would do anything it took to win.
I'll see you next Tuesday.
Okay.
Hey, my 2 favorite gals.
Darling.
Ross may be distracted, but his family isn't.
Winnie and I had a great day.
I can see that.
Just wait until you see Amy's new outfit.
My dear sister, you are a bad influence.
She bonded with them, in particular his sister Winnie,
Well, look at you.
who seemed to like Amy very much.
And what else we got here?
Ross's siblings loved Amy. They wanted him to marry her.
But as the months drag on, there's still no ceremony. In fact, Ross spends more time in his practice than with his would-be wife.
He'd moved up in his life. He had more opportunities as a lawyer than he did before. The relationship gets a bit more volatile, too.
Amy? What happened?
Why are you so late?
I was working late. Are you gonna clean this up?
Are you going to marry me?
Don't start.
I think people in a relationship, oftentimes you're the last to know for sure that it's gone sideways.
Ross seduced Amy away from her family. Now he's doing it again.
To the best outcome you could have hoped for.
To the best lawyer I could have hoped for.
With his clients.
You're a single woman now, and you're no longer my client.
He's meeting divorcees, so eligible women. So he's got a lot more temptation.
But you're married.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
Ross was a dirty, rotten scoundrel.
After giving up everything for Ross, Amy will do anything to keep him. She starts keeping tabs on his movements.
It was pretty close to the breaking point for Amy Hill.
What she discovers breaks her heart.
The love of her life, the man she'd given up everything for, out with another woman. Amy's world came to an end.
(1911) In Salt Lake City, Amy Hill knows all too well her lover's charm. Ross Bonney swept her away from her family. Now he's doing it to someone else.
He chased her, he lured her, he used her, and then he dumped her.
Amy confides in Ross's sister, Winnie.
His family was pretty supportive of her and liked her, and I think felt really a lot of sympathy for her.
How could he?
Are you sure it wasn't just a meeting?
You don't take clients to a hotel. If he doesn't marry me, I'm ruined.
Marriage would repair both of your reputations.
Amy needed Ross to marry her, to raise her status in the community.
They agree to confront Ross.
And about Amy, number one was how profound and deep her love and dependence was on him. And number two, that she had a revolver in her muff.
Amy, stop!
Winnie, Ross's sister, tried to grab the gun out of her hand.
Amy, no! Stop!
But she was determined. This is pretty cold-blooded, really. She stands over him and pumps another round into his face.
I think the first shot was anger and revenge.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Help!
And the second shot was, I want you dead forever.
There will be no marriage, no restored reputation, no bright future.
Not only had she lost her first marriage and her children, now she'd lost the man that she left them for.
I just shot Bonnie!
Give me the gun.
Oh, do call a doctor.
Right here.
Amy doesn't run.
I'm gonna leave now.
She surrenders and is arrested immediately. Her adventure is over.
Amy killed Ross on the exact anniversary date, 5 years of losing her family. That was not an accident. Ross ruined her life, and he had to pay.
Did you love him?
Of course. With all of my heart.
Contemplating the rest of her life in prison, there's only one chance Amy has left.
I'm Ross's sister.
Sympathy.
His own sister, who watched him be murdered, shot in the head, is a witness for the defense.
I'm surprised that you two are still friends.
Amy was pushed too far.
She just seemed like a broken person. And that also played in her favor in the courts.
In 1917, Amy Hill pleads guilty to involuntary manslaughter, but receives only 9 months in prison.
9 months? Is that possible?
Okay, ladies, look this way, please.
For some, even that is too long.
Good, keep looking at the camera.
Amy is released after just 2 months.
So, how does it feel to be free?
I'm so grateful to everyone who supported me.
He didn't have a lot of experience with women.
You're not a little boy anymore.
But that didn't stop her. In short, she was a succubus.
In 2011, volunteering and school drop-offs keep middle-aged mom Kathy Preston on her toes around Kingsland, Texas.
Thank you.
But the 43-year-old always finds time to look for men.
Joe, you're a godsend.
No problem.
Age is no barrier.
Hey, Kathy. Hi.
Got my boy working hard?
He's so helpful.
Joe was in the same high school band class as one of Kathy's daughters. There was a 23-year age difference between Kathy and Joe, but that didn't stop her.
You're not a little boy anymore.
Joe reconnected with Kathy Preston after he had come back home from a brief stint in a vocational school and was living with his mom and dad, looking, I think, for what he was going to do.
Little secret.
Joe, being almost 20, he wanted to get out of the house. Didn't want to be with his parents that much.
And soon after, the boy becomes a live-in lover.
He just got up and left and decided to just live with her.
He's gone!
My parents didn't approve of it, but they really couldn't do anything about it. It was his choice.
In a whirlwind, Joe's life is turned upside down.
I, Catherine Louise Preston, take you, Joe, until death do us part.
Before he knows it, he's a married man.
She got him to marry her in a ceremony that just simply was a game. He didn't know that.
They exchanged rings, but Kathy had no pastor present.
Kathy isolated him. Joe's parents were devastated.
How could she? She was my friend.
The fact that it was somebody who had known their family since Joe was a little boy, it was hard for them to cope with it.
Joe's parents know Kathy has a past. Their son is just the latest in a long line of lovers.
Kathy went through men like a 6-year-old goes through an amusement park.
But the revolving door of men isn't just for kicks. It's for income.
Kathy didn't infuse her relationships with love. She just tried to get what she wanted. And she saw that the easiest way she could make money was to have babies.
It's yours.
Kathy used men to get pregnant so that she could get the child support.
But we were only together one night.
That's all it takes. You have to support this child.
Of course.
To ensure multiple streams of income, Kathy diversifies her investments.
In a matter of 11 years, Kathy had 5 children by 4 different men.
Here, Jane I. That's because we're having twins.
Twins?
Kathy Preston did thrive on multiple sources of child support from the different fathers, and that was her main income staple.
In short, she was a succubus. Look it up, people.
But Kathy's investments aren't the only thing maturing. After she hooks Joe, she discovers she's lost her fertility.
Kathy had entered menopause and was no longer able to have children. She also saw that her children were getting older, and pretty soon those child support payments would come to an end.
But he knew it wasn't going to go over well.
"23-year-old Joe Hernandez reaches out for help in Kingsland, Texas.
I just remember the little conversation that we had. He didn't sound like he was happy.
Hey, sis.
Hey, Joe.
Did you talk to Mom and Dad?
He wanted to come home, but she had too much control over him.
Yeah, I spoke to them.
Are they mad at me?
No, they're not mad. They just want you to come home.
Joe wants to leave his domineering wife, Kathy Preston, but she calls the shots.
I'm moving out.
No, you're not. You're my husband. You made a commitment.
She'd mentally tortured him for a couple of years and got this narcissist stranglehold on him. He was drained emotionally, he was drained financially.
Well, it's not working out.
This isn't how things usually roll for Kathy. She decides who comes and who goes.
If you have control over somebody, you're gonna react big. So, yeah, she did react really big.
On August 26, 2014, Kathy has a solution.
Kathy decided to express her feelings. With a piece of concrete on his head while he was sleeping.
The rock lacerated and tore his scalp. It crushed the bone in, but to Kathy's surprise, he didn't die. His breathing continued. So she took a pillow from the bed, held it over Joe's face, and pressed on it. It took about 2 to 3 minutes, and Joe's body was lifeless.
At only 23 years of age, Joe's first love affair is also his last.
He thought that he was gonna come home, but
doing was making a mess and almost burned her own house down. And it was because she was worried about losing her house that she called the emergency services.
What's your emergency?
I kind of got a controlled burn going on.
Strangest 911 call I've ever heard.
What kind of fire is that, ma'am?
I don't know how to answer that.
She was just dislodged from reality.
Kathy is happy to lose her husband, but not her house.
What's the problem, ma'am?
I'm having a bad week.
But she's sure she still got this.
Kathy's song was that she was a victim of domestic abuse.
My husband has been abusing me.
Well, where is he now?
He's on the bedroom floor.
But there was never any evidence police could find.
He hit his head on a rock.
He wouldn't hurt anybody. He wouldn't hurt a fly.
It wasn't enough that she killed a young man.
What the hell? Oh my God.
She tried to besmirch his reputation just because he wanted to leave her.
Forensic evidence is unmistakable.
They knew that she had smothered him. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death as suffocation associated with head injuries. He ruled the manner of death as homicide.
In 2016, Catherine Preston is convicted of murder. Her sentence, 45 years in prison.
This particular crime is a classic example of a stupid narcissist way out of their league. The only thing in the world that's important is what they want.
Kathy saw men not as people, but as assets, to be traded and cashed in whenever she wanted. And when an innocent young man didn't play along,
I'm moving out.
she liquidated him.
She just used him up until there was no other benefit that she could get from him, and then she killed him.
I forgive people. I would say easily, but what she did was wrong. She's a bad person.
These deadly women weren't lovers. They were haters.
The call comes in just after midnight, a voice thin with panic cutting through the static of the line, an address spoken twice, then silence, and when the police arrive the apartment is dark, the city humming outside like nothing has changed, shoes lined neatly by the door, a kettle cold on the stove, a calendar frozen on a date that will never move again, and from that moment Tokyo gains a shadow it will carry for decades, a case that refuses to settle, a story that sinks into the cracks of the city and waits. It is 1999, the end of a century, the city restless with anticipation, neon reflections trembling on wet pavement, commuters flowing like tides through Shinjuku Station, and somewhere in a quiet residential block a young woman named Aiko Nakamura has vanished without warning, without a note, without a struggle anyone can clearly describe, just absence, sudden and absolute, the kind that makes neighbors second-guess every sound they ignored and every door they didn't open. Her phone is still on the table, battery full, her bag by the bed, passport untouched, bank account silent, a life paused mid-sentence. The first officers walk the room slowly, methodically, the way they have been trained, but there is already a feeling in the air that something is wrong in a way that can't be measured, that this is not a missed train or a spontaneous trip or a lover's quarrel that will resolve itself by morning. The windows are locked from the inside. There are no signs of forced entry. The elevator camera shows nothing unusual. The street camera across the road was malfunctioning that night. Small details begin to line up into a pattern that doesn't yet have a name. By dawn, the building is awake with whispers, neighbors clustered in doorways, the word missing spreading faster than facts. And by noon, the media trucks are parked along the curb, lenses pointed at balconies, headlines already forming in the collective imagination. Mysterious disappearance, young woman, quiet neighborhood, unanswered questions. The police release a brief statement, calm, restrained, assuring the public there is no immediate danger. But inside the station the file has been opened, stamped, and placed on a desk where it will sit longer than anyone expects. Aiko is 26, an office worker for a mid-sized design firm, punctual, reliable, the kind of person whose routine is so predictable it becomes invisible. She leaves for work at the same time each morning, returns by the same train, shops at the same convenience store. Friends describe her as careful, private, not the type to disappear. Her parents live outside the city and speak to her every Sunday night. That Sunday the phone rings and rings and rings. By Monday they are on a train to Tokyo, carrying a fear they can't yet name. The investigation begins the way they all do, with lists and timelines and interviews conducted under fluorescent lights. Co-workers report nothing unusual. No recent arguments. No strange calls. A neighbor remembers hearing footsteps in the hallway late at night but can't say whose. Another recalls the sound of the elevator stopping on the wrong floor. A delivery driver thinks he saw her earlier that evening, but he isn't sure. Each detail is written down, boxed, labeled, waiting for the moment when it might suddenly matter. Search teams comb nearby parks, riverbanks, construction sites, the city unfolding in grids on maps tacked to the wall. Dogs are brought in, noses to the ground, handlers watching for any sign of change, but the trail fades quickly, dissolving into the overwhelming scent of a city that never stops moving. Days pass, then weeks. Posters go up at stations and street corners, her face smiling out at strangers rushing by, eyes following them down staircases and into trains. Some people stop and look. Most do not. As summer turns heavy and humid, the case begins to cool in the subtle way only detectives recognize. Leads slow. Tips repeat themselves. The same names circle back. The file grows thicker but no clearer. Aiko's apartment remains sealed, dust settling on surfaces that were once part of her daily life, and every time an officer unlocks the door there is a brief, irrational hope that she might be there, sitting quietly waiting to be found. She never is. The media attention spikes and fades in waves, each new rumor briefly dragging the case back into the light before it slips again into shadow. A supposed sighting in Osaka proves false. An anonymous letter claims knowledge but leads nowhere. A man is questioned and released. Another is cleared after an alibi checks out. Each dead end leaves behind a residue of frustration, a sense that something essential has been missed, overlooked in the rush of those first crucial days. By the end of the year, the phrase cold case begins to appear in quiet conversations among investigators, not officially, not yet, but as a possibility, a future they don't want to accept. The turn of the millennium arrives with fireworks and countdowns, the city celebrating. While somewhere in a police archive a box labeled Nakamura, Aiko is slid onto a shelf. Time moves forward. The case does not. Years pass, marked by subtle changes in technology and procedure. Old tapes are digitized. New databases are created. Fresh eyes glance over old notes, hoping to see what others did not. Occasionally, a junior detective stumbles across the file and feels the familiar pull, the unanswered question that refuses to stay quiet. They re-interview a witness. They knock on a door. They compare timelines again. The result is always the same, the truth hovering just out of reach. For Aiko's family, the waiting becomes a permanent state. Birthdays come and go. Holidays are quieter. Her room at her parents' house remains untouched. A museum of a life interrupted. Every phone call carries a jolt of hope that fades as soon as a voice says it's the wrong number, or a survey, or nothing at all. They learn to live with uncertainty, but it never becomes normal. The city changes around the case, buildings replaced, streets renamed, but the questions remain stubbornly intact. What happened in that apartment? How did someone enter and leave without being seen? Why were there no signs of a struggle? Was she targeted or was it random? Each theory answers one question and raises three more. The absence of evidence becomes its own kind of presence, pressing down on everyone who touches the file. Inside the police department, the Nakamura case gains a reputation, spoken of in lowered voices, a reminder that not every story has an ending, that some disappearances resist even the most careful reconstruction. Detectives retire. New ones take their place. The file is passed along generation to generation, a quiet inheritance of doubt. And then, years later, long after most people have stopped expecting anything at all, something shifts. Not a breakthrough, not yet, just a tremor at the edge of the familiar pattern. A detail resurfaces during a routine review, a name half forgotten, a statement that no longer sits comfortably with the rest. It is small enough to dismiss, easy to ignore, but it lingers unsettling like a sound heard in the dark that refuses to explain itself away. The cold case stirs just slightly, as if the city itself has taken a breath and held it, unaware that the silence surrounding Aiko Nakamura is about to be tested in ways no one could have predicted, that the past has not finished speaking, and that somewhere, someone has been carrying a truth heavy enough to bend time, waiting for the moment it can no longer stay buried. The tremor does not announce itself with sirens or headlines, it arrives quietly, buried in paperwork, a single line in an interview transcript that had been read a dozen times before and dismissed as nothing more than background noise, A neighbor's offhand remark about a man in the hallway, ordinary at the time, forgettable, until years later it is read again under different eyes, in a different city, by a detective who has learned that the smallest inconsistencies are often the loudest. The man was described as polite, well-dressed, carrying nothing, someone who looked like he belonged there, and that is precisely what now feels wrong. The detective pauses, pen hovering, the hum of the office fading as memory and instinct collide, because people who belong rarely leave impressions, and people who don't often do. He pulls the file closer, flips back through pages yellowed at the edges, and sees the same name once, twice, always in the margins, never at the center, a maintenance contractor who claimed he was working in the building that week, a story that checked out just enough to pass, just enough to be forgotten when the pressure was highest and attention was elsewhere. In 1999, Tokyo was moving too fast for subtle doubts. The department was stretched thin. The disappearance had no body, no blood, no clear crime scene, and without those anchors, cases drift. The contractor had an ID, a schedule, a supervisor who confirmed he was employed. He was interviewed briefly, cooperated, answered questions with calm efficiency. There was no reason to look deeper. Or so it seemed. Now, years later, the city has slowed in a way that only time can enforce, and cold cases are revisited with tools that didn't exist when they were born. Old employment records are cross-checked digitally. Logs are compared. Addresses are mapped against timelines with a precision that once required weeks of manual work. And slowly, the clean edges of the contractor's story begin to blur. His work order places him in the building 2 days before Aiko disappeared. Not the night of. His supervisor's memory is vague, reconstructed from habit rather than fact. A gap opens, narrow but unmistakable. The detective brings the observation to his unit chief, a man who has seen enough reopened cases to know both the promise and the danger of chasing ghosts. They agree to proceed quietly. No media. No family notification. Just verification. The contractor's name is run again through updated databases. A prior arrest surfaces, minor, unrelated, long ago, but it shifts the tone. Not proof, not even suspicion, just wait. They locate him living in a different prefecture now, older, heavier, married, working a job that keeps him mostly out of sight. When officers knock on his door for a follow-up interview, he seems surprised but not alarmed, a practiced calm that suggests either innocence or experience. He answers their questions politely, repeats his original statement, fills in gaps with confident detail. He agrees to provide a DNA sample, laughs lightly about how strange it is to be contacted after so many years. He says he hopes they find the truth. Back in Tokyo, the sample is logged, processed, and compared against what little material was preserved from the apartment, fibers collected from the entryway, trace evidence that never yielded results in 1999 but has been carefully stored ever since. The waiting begins again. A familiar tension settling into the department, officers pretending not to watch the clock while watching it constantly. When the results come back, they are inconclusive. Not a match. Not an exclusion. Another almost. The case threatens to sink back into dormancy. The brief flare of momentum fading into frustration. But something has changed. The contractor is no longer a footnote. His name is spoken aloud in meetings. His movements are charted. His past associates are identified. And in doing so, another threat emerges, one that leads not forward but sideways, toward a man who knew the contractor casually. Someone who worked security at multiple buildings in the area, including Aiko's. Security logs from 1999 are incomplete, handwritten, many lost to time, but a pattern appears, shifts traded, doors propped open for smoke breaks, cameras left unattended. The image of a sealed, impossible to enter building begins to crack. What once looked like an airtight mystery now resembles something more human, more fallible. Opportunity seeps in through the edges. Detectives track down former residents, people who have long since moved away. Their memories faded but not erased. One recalls seeing a security guard arguing quietly with a woman near the elevators weeks before the disappearance. Another remembers the same guard asking odd questions about who lived alone. None of this was reported at the time. It didn't feel important then. Now it feels heavy. The guard is located easily. He is cooperative, perhaps too much so, eager to talk, eager to help, eager to distance himself from anything that might cast a shadow. He remembers Aiko, says she was friendly, says he often chatted with residents. He denies any argument, suggests the witness must be mistaken. His timeline is solid, backed by family, by records. Another wall. Another pause. As winter settles over the city, the investigation grinds forward inch by inch, driven less by confidence than by refusal to stop. The family is informed that the case has been reopened in a limited capacity. Hope flickers, cautious and painful. They have learned not to ask too many questions. They have learned that progress is fragile. Then, unexpectedly, the first real crack appears not in the evidence but in a person. The contractor's wife contacts police, hesitant, conflicted, saying her husband has been distant since the interview, drinking more, waking at night in visible distress. She says he has been muttering in his sleep, fragments of sentences that make no sense, references to an apartment, to a mistake. She doesn't know what it means, but she is afraid. Officers note the call, careful not to read too much into it, but when they re-interview the contractor, the change is immediate. His composure is thinner. He hesitates where he once answered smoothly. He asks how long the investigation will continue. He asks whether people ever confess to things they didn't do. The questions linger in the air long after the interview ends. The cold case, once static, now feels unstable, as if the ground beneath it has shifted, as if the silence that protected it for so long is beginning to fracture under the weight of time, pressure building quietly, relentlessly, toward a moment no one in that room can yet see clearly, but all of them can feel approaching. Pressure changes people long before it breaks them, and in the weeks that follow the second interview the contractor's life begins to show the strain in small, observable ways: missed shifts, unanswered calls, a car parked for hours in places with no purpose, and detectives notice because they are watching now, quietly, patiently, letting the man tell his own story through routine and deviation. He is not a suspect on paper, not officially, but the case has learned to survive without labels, to move in the gray where certainty hasn't yet arrived. The surveillance logs read like a diary of unease, times and locations recorded without commentary, but the pattern is unmistakable: a man circling his own thoughts, returning again and again to neighborhoods he no longer has business in, standing outside buildings that resemble the one where Aiko vanished, looking up at balconies, at windows, at the kind of ordinary architecture that becomes unbearable once it is tied to a memory you cannot escape. Inside the department, debate grows sharper. Some argue the behavior is meaningless, stress amplified by police attention, the mind filling gaps with drama. Others feel the familiar tightening in the chest that comes when a case begins to breathe again. They revisit the apartment file, reconstructing the night hour by hour, imagining movements through hallways, doors opening without force, voices kept low. They map the contractor's access points, the keys he carried, the codes he might have known. Suddenly, the impossible seems merely unlikely. A break comes not from a lab or a database, but from a dusty storage room in the building management office where a retired administrator kept boxes no one bothered to catalog. Inside, among invoices and tenant notices, is a maintenance logbook older than the official records, handwritten entries in careful script, documenting after-hours access requests that never made it into the system. One date stands out. One apartment number. Icos. The entry is brief, almost dismissive, noting a plumbing inspection requested late in the evening, signed off by a name that matches the contractor's, a signature slightly different from the one on file, rushed, angled as if written quickly. The timestamp is wrong, off by an hour compared to the building's standard procedure. But the presence of the entry is enough to electrify the room. This is not proof. It is possibility. And in a cold case, possibility is oxygen. Detectives move carefully now, aware that the wrong step could collapse what they have slowly assembled. They consult prosecutors, outline the new findings, the circumstantial weight, the behavioral shifts. The decision is made to bring the contractor in again, this time not for a casual conversation, but for a formal interview, recorded, structured, deliberate. He arrives looking older than he did weeks earlier, shoulders rounded, eyes tired. He asks for water. He asks if this will take long. The room is neutral, intentionally unremarkable, a place designed to make time stretch. The detectives begin with the logbook, sliding photocopies across the table, watching his face, the micro-expressions that flicker and disappear too quickly for the untrained eye. His gaze lingers on the page a fraction of a second too long. He says the signature looks like his but isn't. He says he doesn't remember that inspection. He says records were sloppy back then, that mistakes happened. His voice remains steady, but his foot taps against the floor. An unconscious rhythm that accelerates as questions narrow. They do not accuse. They do not rush. They let silence do the work. Hours pass. The city outside moves through afternoon into evening. Inside the room, the contractor's certainty erodes at the edges. He contradicts himself on small details, corrects his own statements mid-sentence, laughs at inappropriate moments. At one point, he stops entirely, hands folded, staring at the table as if it might answer for him. The detectives shift tactics not toward confrontation, but toward empathy, a careful acknowledgement of time, of burden, of how long secrets can weigh on a person. They talk about 1999, about how different things were, about how mistakes can spiral beyond intention. They talk about families who wait, about questions that never rest. The contractor swallows hard. He asks if anyone has ever confessed after so many years. They do not answer directly. They ask instead what keeps him awake at night. The room holds its breath. For a moment it seems he will stand, demand a lawyer, end the interview. Instead he exhales slowly, a sound that feels like surrender but is not yet one. He says he didn't plan for anything to happen. He says it was supposed to be quick. He stops again. The words hang there, incomplete, dangerous. Detectives exchange a glance, trained not to interrupt, not to shape what comes next. He rubs his face with both hands, presses his palms into his eyes, and when he looks up, something has shifted, a crack finally visible. He says he was there that night. He says he let himself in. He says Aiko answered the door. They ask him to continue. He shakes his head, tears forming, saying he can't, that he needs time, that he didn't mean for it to go that way. The interview is paused. A lawyer is requested. The statement remains unfinished, but the impact is immediate, seismic. For the first time in over 2 decades, the case has a voice from inside the silence. News of the partial admission moves through the department like a shockwave, contained, controlled, but impossible to ignore. The family is not yet told. Procedures are followed. Evidence is re-examined in light of the new claim. The building logbook becomes central. The fibers are reviewed again. Timelines are redrawn. Everything bends toward the moment he says he was there. That night, detectives leave the station into cold air. The city glowing as it always has, indifferent to breakthroughs and confessions. Somewhere in that sprawl, a truth has begun to surface, fragile, incomplete, but undeniable. The Tokyo 1999 cold case is no longer sleeping. It is awake now, restless, and whatever comes next will change the shape of the story forever. Once a door opens even slightly, it cannot be closed without consequence, and the contractor's unfinished words ripple outward, reshaping every assumption the investigation once relied on, forcing detectives to confront a reality they have only imagined until now. The partial admission is logged with meticulous care, every pause, every hesitation, every phrase weighed for meaning, because in a case this old, language itself becomes evidence, and silence becomes a map of what someone is afraid to say. The lawyer arrives quickly, measured and alert, shutting down further questioning for the night, and the contractor is escorted out through a side exit, shielded from cameras that do not yet know they should be waiting. Officially, nothing has changed. Unofficially, everything has. The case is no longer built on absence but on presence, on a man placing himself inside the locked space that once defied explanation. Detectives work through the night, fueled by a familiar mix of adrenaline and caution, replaying the recorded interview again and again, isolating phrases, noting the moments where his voice tightens, where his eyes drop, where his breathing shifts. I didn't plan for anything to happen. It was supposed to be quick. These are not the words of an innocent man caught in confusion. They are the fragments of a story interrupted. They return to the apartment, now long since occupied by other tenants, the original layout partially altered, walls repainted, fixtures replaced, but the bones of the space remain. Measurements are taken again. Sightlines re-examined. They stand in the hallway and imagine the door opening, the exchange of words, the step inside that changes everything. They imagine how easily someone with the right access could make a crime look like nothing at all. Evidence that once felt mute now seems to whisper. Fibers found near the entryway are reclassified, compared against updated reference samples. A partial print, too smudged to be useful in 1999, is scanned with modern software. It does not yield a clean match, but it aligns with the contractor's general profile. Another nudge forward. The maintenance logbook becomes a focal point, its authenticity scrutinized, its chain of custody documented. Handwriting experts examine the signature, noting similarities and deviations, concluding that while it cannot be definitively attributed, it is consistent enough to matter. Prosecutors are briefed, cautious but attentive, aware that cold cases collapse under overconfidence as easily as they stagnate under doubt. Meanwhile, the contractor's world narrows. Friends notice his withdrawal. His wife stops answering questions. Rumors begin to circulate in their small community, indistinct but heavy, the sense that something is wrong without anyone knowing exactly what. He stops going to work. He stops answering his phone. The pressure, once internal, now seeps into everything. A second formal interview is scheduled days later. This time the tone is different from the start, quieter, more deliberate. He is informed of his rights again, the recording equipment visible, undeniable. He listens, nods, says he understands. When asked if he wishes to continue speaking, he hesitates, then says yes. They return to the night in question, asking him to walk through it without interruption. He begins cautiously recounting mundane details, the weather, the late shift, the reason he claims he went to the building. His voice shakes when he reaches the door. He says he knocked. He says Aiko recognized him from previous maintenance visits and didn't feel threatened. He says he stepped inside because it seemed easier than talking in the hallway. The detectives let him talk, even when the story falters, even when he circles back on himself. He admits now that the inspection was not authorized, that he wrote the log entry to cover his access. He admits he had noticed Aiko before, that he knew she lived alone. The room feels smaller with every sentence. Then comes the moment his lawyer shifts in his chair, the moment everyone recognizes as dangerous. The contractor says there was an argument. He says voices were raised. He says he panicked. He does not yet say what happened next, but the implication settles heavily, filling the space between words. When asked directly if he harmed her, he closes his eyes. The silence stretches, thick and deliberate. Finally, he says he grabbed her. He says she fell. He says he doesn't know if she hit her head or stopped breathing right away. He says everything happened too fast. This is not a clean confession. It is fragmented, emotionally charged, riddled with gaps, but it is enough to redraw the line between speculation and accusation. The interview ends shortly after, the lawyer asserting the need for rest, for consultation. The contractor is not arrested that night, but the weight of what he has said follows him out of the room, impossible to shed. For the detectives, the shift is profound. They are no longer asking what might have happened, but where it ended, and that question opens an entirely new field of urgency. Searches are planned, informed by his statements, by his access routes, by the geography of 1999 Tokyo as it existed before redevelopment erased key landmarks. The family is finally notified, carefully, compassionately, that a person of interest has made significant statements, that the case is moving in ways it hasn't in decades. There is no celebration, only a cautious, trembling acknowledgement that the silence may finally be breaking. As dawn approaches, the city resumes its rhythm, unaware that beneath its surface an old wound has been reopened, that the Tokyo 1999 cold case is crossing a threshold from mystery into something darker, more defined, and that the next steps will demand answers not just about what happened, but about how the truth managed to hide for so long in plain sight. Confession changes the temperature of a case, not by resolving it, but by stripping away the comfort of distance, and once the contractor's words are on record, the investigation accelerates into a phase defined less by theory and more by consequence. Every sentence he offered becomes a vector, pointing outward toward places that were never searched, moments that were never reconstructed, decisions made in panic and then buried under years of silence. Search warrants are drafted with surgical precision, narrow enough to survive scrutiny, broad enough to matter. Prosecutors insist on restraint, on corroboration, on evidence that can stand when memory falters and motives are challenged. The detectives understand. Cold cases do not forgive impatience. They move forward anyway, step by deliberate step. The contractor's movements in the weeks following Aiko's disappearance are reconstructed in painful detail, Receipts pulled from archive systems, toll records retrieved, old transit cards analyzed for residual data. Patterns emerge, not dramatic at first but consistent, a series of short trips away from his home prefecture, always late at night, always returning before dawn. He claimed they were related to work. The records say otherwise. Teams fan out to locations tied to those trips, places altered by time but not erased, industrial zones near the river, wooded edges at the city's margins, stretches of land once overlooked because they were too ordinary to inspire fear. Ground-penetrating radar is deployed quietly. Cadaver dogs work methodically, handlers reading their behavior like a second language. For days nothing happens. The silence presses back. Then in a narrow strip of land behind an abandoned warehouse slated for redevelopment, a dog signals, a subtle change in posture that makes everyone freeze. The soil is disturbed. Not recently. Long ago. Excavation begins slowly, reverently. The air thick with the awareness that this moment has been waiting for 25 years. What they find is incomplete, fragmented, consistent with long exposure to the elements, but enough to trigger a cascade of protocol. Bones are photographed, catalogued, lifted with care. Forensic anthropologists are called in. The area is sealed. The city continues to move just beyond the perimeter, unaware of what is being unearthed beneath its feet. Identification takes time. It always does. But when the preliminary results align with Aiko's profile, age, stature, time frame, the confirmation lands like a quiet detonation inside the department. There is no cheering. No relief. Only a heavy acknowledgement that absence has finally taken shape, that the waiting can at last end in a form no one ever wanted. The contractor is brought back in. This time there is no ambiguity about the stakes. He is informed of the discovery, shown photographs blurred at the edges for decency, enough to make the truth unavoidable. His reaction is immediate and visceral. His shoulders collapse inward. He whispers her name. He begins to cry. The confession that follows is longer, more detailed, still fractured but no longer evasive. He speaks of obsession he never admitted to himself, of watching routines, of convincing himself that a conversation would be harmless. He describes the argument escalating, her fear, his loss of control. He describes the moment he realized she was not moving, the panic that overtook reason. He describes the decision to hide what he had done, not out of calculation but terror. Detectives listen, recording everything, asking clarifying questions only when necessary, careful not to contaminate the narrative. They cross-reference his account with the evidence as it comes in, noting where it aligns, where it diverges, where memory bends to self-preservation. It is not a perfect confession. Does not need to be. It is enough. News breaks within hours of the remains being identified. Headlines erupt across the city, across the country, the words Tokyo, 1999, and cold case colliding in bold type. The unexpected confession shocks the public, reopens old wounds, ignites debates about missed opportunities, about how a man could live an ordinary life while carrying a secret like this in plain sight. The family is notified privately before the story spreads further, ushered into a quiet room where the truth is delivered gently, inexorably. There are tears. There is silence. There is a kind of grief that feels almost unfamiliar after so many years of uncertainty. They ask to see her. They ask what happens next. They ask questions that have no answers that can satisfy. As legal proceedings begin, the narrative tightens, transforming from mystery to reckoning. The contractor is formally arrested, charged. His name released to the public that once passed him on the street without a second glance. His face appears on screens everywhere, an image now inseparable from the story he tried to erase. Inside the department there is reflection as much as resolution. Files are closed but discussions continue, about what signs were missed, about how easily access and routine can become camouflage. The case becomes a lesson cited in training, a reminder that cold cases are not dormant, only waiting. The city absorbs the shock in stages, conversations on trains, murmured exchanges in offices, a collective processing of the idea that justice can arrive decades late and still feel both necessary and insufficient. Tokyo does what it always does. It moves forward. But beneath the movement, the Tokyo 1999 cold case leaves an imprint that will not fade easily. a reminder etched into memory that time does not erase truth. It only delays its voice, and when that voice finally speaks, it changes everything it touches. After the arrest, silence returns in a different form, heavier, procedural, wrapped in schedules and filings and court dates. And the city that once devoured the story now waits for it to prove itself under oath. The confession is no longer just a narrative. It is evidence that must survive daylight, cross-examination, and the slow grind of law. Detectives adjust to the new rhythm, trading late-night searches for conference rooms and transcripts, knowing that a case can still unravel even after the truth appears to surface. Prosecutors assemble the timeline piece by piece, aligning the contractor's statements with physical findings, travel records, and the maintenance logbook that first reopened the door. Each alignment tightens the story. Each inconsistency is flagged, annotated, anticipated. The defense prepares in parallel, emphasizing gaps, memory decay, the danger of retrospective certainty in a case measured in decades. This is where cold cases are most vulnerable, where doubt can seep back in if precision falters. Forensic reports arrive steadily. Soil samples from the burial site match traces found on the contractor's old work boots, preserved in storage after a minor, unrelated investigation years earlier. Fibers align with materials used in the apartment at the time. None of it is singularly decisive. Together, they form a pattern that refuses to be dismissed. The science does what memory cannot, anchoring the confession to the ground. Witnesses are recontacted, some now elderly, some surprised to hear the name again. Their recollections are imperfect but consistent in tone. A man who lingered, who asked questions that felt personal, who blended into routine so well he became invisible. The security guard testifies about lax protocols, about doors left unlocked, about a culture of trust that hindsight now exposes as risk. The building itself becomes a witness, its design diagrams entered into evidence to explain how someone could move without being seen. The family prepares for court with quiet determination. They have lived too long with not knowing to be shaken now by procedure. Photographs are selected carefully. Statements are drafted and revised. They decide what to remember publicly and what to keep private, an impossible line that nonetheless must be drawn. The absence that defined their lives is about to be spoken aloud in a room full of strangers. When the trial begins, the atmosphere is restrained but charged. Reporters lining the hallways, cameras barred from the courtroom but not from the narrative forming outside. The contractor sits at the defense table, smaller than he appeared in photographs, eyes downcast, hands folded. He listens as his own words are read back to him, stripped of hesitation, flattened into text. He does not object. He does not correct. He simply listens. The confession is challenged as expected, framed as the product of pressure, of suggestion, of a man desperate to end scrutiny. Detectives testify calmly, methodically, explaining pauses, safeguards, the moments when questioning stopped and counsel was provided. The recordings are played. The jurors watch his face as he speaks, hear the shifts in tone, the points where detail emerges unprompted. The room feels compressed by attention. Expert witnesses explain degradation, how time alters both evidence and memory, how convergence matters more than perfection. They explain why a partial match can still matter, why opportunity paired with admission carries weight. The defense counters with its own experts, sowing doubt with equal professionalism. The balance is delicate, and everyone in the room knows it. Outside, the public reacts in waves. Some express relief that the city's long-running question has an answer. Others ask why it took so long, why access was so easy, why no one noticed sooner. Editorials dissect the investigation's early missteps. Talk shows debate the nature of confession and guilt. The phrase cold case becomes shorthand for both failure and persistence, a reminder of what patience can uncover and what time can hide. Inside the department, the mood is subdued. Closure does not arrive as celebration. It arrives as exhaustion. Detectives review the case one last time, documenting lessons learned, protocols revised, training updated. They know another file will soon take its place on the shelf, another unanswered call waiting for the right moment to be heard. As testimony concludes, the case narrows toward a decision, the sprawling mystery of 1999 now condensed into a question the jury must answer with finality. The city waits again, but this time the waiting has shape and sound and consequence. The Tokyo 1999 cold case has crossed from legend into judgment, and whatever the verdict, the story has already altered the way absence is understood, proving that silence can be patient, but it is rarely permanent. Deliberation stretches time into something elastic, minutes swelling into hours as the jury disappears behind closed doors, and outside the courtroom the air feels suspended, as if the city itself is waiting to exhale. Reporters watch the doors. The family sits together, hands folded, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. Detectives occupy a quiet corner, saying little, replaying testimony in their minds, knowing that once a case reaches this point, it no longer belongs to them. When the jury returns, the room stands, the sound of movement sharp in the silence. The verdict is read steadily, without drama, but the words land with unmistakable force, a finding that confirms what had once been unthinkable, that a disappearance which haunted a city for a quarter-century has a name attached to it, a sequence of events, a human hand at its center. The contractor remains still, eyes forward, absorbing the outcome without visible reaction. The sentence comes later, after statements are heard, after the law weighs intent and consequence. The family speaks last. Their words are restrained, measured, carrying the weight of years rather than anger, describing a life interrupted and the long shadow of not knowing. There is no demand for vengeance, only acknowledgement of loss and a plea that no other family endure the same silence. The courtroom listens. Even the cameras outside seem to pause. As proceedings conclude, the case transitions once more, from trial to aftermath, from question to record. Files are finalized. Evidence is archived. The long chain of custody closes its final loop. Officially, the Tokyo 1999 cold case is no longer cold. Unofficially, its presence lingers, reshaping how similar cases are viewed, how old assumptions are challenged, how persistence is valued over immediacy. The media cycles shift, as they always do, but the story resurfaces repeatedly, referenced in other investigations, cited when a confession breaks through years of denial, when a routine review uncovers something everyone else missed. The phrase unexpected confession becomes attached to it, a reminder that truth does not always arrive through technology or witnesses, but through the slow erosion of a secret. For the detectives who carried the case in its final years, the impact is personal and professional. They return to their desks to new files and fresh mysteries, but with a sharpened awareness of time, of how patience can be an investigative tool as powerful as urgency. They speak about the case to recruits, not as a triumph, but as a warning about access, about assumptions, about the danger of mistaking quiet for safety. The building where Aiko once lived fades back into anonymity. New residents come and go, unaware of the history embedded in the walls, the ordinary routines that once concealed something extraordinary and terrible. The city does not mark the place. Tokyo rarely does. Memory here is carried by people, not plaques. The contractor is transferred, his name gradually receding from headlines into legal documents and archives. Another figure absorbed into the system. His confession, once shocking, becomes a reference point, quoted in summaries, analyzed in classes, debated in editorials about guilt and remorse. Whether his words fully explain his actions is a question that will never be settled. The law does not require understanding, only accountability. For the family, life resumes in a form they did not choose but must inhabit. There is a funeral at last, a place to bring flowers, a marker that fixes a name in the world again. Grief takes on a different shape, less sharp, no less heavy. They speak of Aiko in the present tense sometimes, catching themselves, then continuing anyway. The years between disappearance and discovery do not vanish. They simply integrate into everything else. The case leaves behind a subtle shift in the public consciousness, a renewed attention to the stories that fade too quickly, to the missing whose posters are taken down before answers arrive. It reinforces an uncomfortable truth, that time can protect wrongdoing as easily as it can obscure it, and that the ordinary can be the most effective disguise. As the city settles back into routine, the Tokyo 1999 cold case remains what it has always been at its core, a reminder etched into collective memory that justice is not a moment but a process, that silence is not the same as peace, and that even after decades, the past can still reach forward, demanding to be heard. With the verdict entered and the sentence fixed, the story does not end so much as it thins, stretching into places where headlines cannot follow, into the quieter consequences that ripple outward long after the courtroom empties. Appeals are discussed in legal terms, measured and abstract, but the core facts hold, anchored by admission, by location, by the convergence that finally aligned after decades of drift. The system does what it always does next. It moves on. People do not, at least not all at once. Inside the police department, a formal review begins, a sober accounting of what happened in 1999 and why it took so long to arrive here. Memos circulate. Meetings fill whiteboards with timelines and arrows. Access protocols are rewritten. Oversight tightens. The case becomes a reference point not because of its notoriety, but because of its ordinariness, a demonstration of how routine can create blind spots wide enough for a crime to pass through unnoticed. Detectives speak candidly about the early days, about how the lack of force and noise shaped assumptions, about how the absence of a body redirected attention away from the building itself. There is no scapegoating, only acknowledgement that systems are only as strong as the questions they allow themselves to ask. The maintenance logbook, once overlooked, becomes emblematic of that lesson. A reminder that paper trails matter, even when they seem trivial. Academic circles take interest. Criminology programs analyze the case in lectures and journals, focusing on delayed confession, on the psychology of concealment, on how pressure accumulates invisibly until it finds release. The contractor's statements are parsed not for sympathy but for pattern, how he framed his actions, how he minimized intention, how language shifted as the weight of evidence grew. The analysis is clinical, detached, necessary. Public reaction evolves as distance grows. Initial shock gives way to reflection. Conversations move from outrage to inquiry, from how this happened to how often it might be happening elsewhere, unseen. Community groups advocate for better tenant awareness, for clearer reporting channels, for security practices that balance trust with verification. The case becomes a catalyst, not dramatic but persistent. In the family's home, change arrives slowly. The room that was once kept untouched is finally opened, not to erase but to reclaim. Personal items are sorted with care, decisions made about what to keep close and what to let go. Memory shifts from preservation to integration, a painful but necessary step toward living alongside loss, rather than inside it. They receive letters from strangers, people who followed the case, who felt compelled to say something now that silence has lifted. Some letters are thoughtful, others intrusive. They read a few, discard most, understanding that public interest, however well-meaning, cannot substitute for privacy. What they carry forward is smaller and more durable. A name spoken aloud without uncertainty. A story no longer interrupted mid-sentence. The city, vast and adaptive, absorbs the case into its layered history. New stories take precedence. New crises demand attention. Yet the Tokyo 1999 cold case surfaces unexpectedly, in late-night conversations, in the quiet recognition between strangers who remember the posters, the unanswered questions, the sense that something was wrong and stayed wrong for too long. It becomes a shared memory, diffuse but persistent. For the detectives, the final impact reveals itself in subtle ways. They approach new cases with a slightly different posture, linger a little longer on routine explanations, revisit assumptions more readily. They know now that time is not an enemy alone. It is also a collaborator, capable of wearing down certainty and secrecy alike. They know that some answers arrive not because they were forced but because they were waited for. The contractor fades from view, reduced to an identifier in records, his confession distilled into paragraphs and citations. The man who once blended seamlessly into routine is now defined by a single act and its aftermath. Whether he finds clarity or remorse in confinement is beyond the reach of the case. Accountability does not require resolution of the inner life. What remains is the echo of a truth that took too long to speak, a reminder that disappearance is not disappearance from consequence, that even the most carefully hidden act leaves traces, and that when those traces finally align, they can collapse decades of silence into a single irrevocable moment. The Tokyo 1999 cold case settles into history not as a mystery anymore, but as a warning written quietly into the fabric of the city, waiting for those who know how to listen. Even as the city moves on, the weight of the case lingers in subtle, unmeasurable ways. Streets seem quieter in certain neighborhoods, the wind carrying memories of a night 2 decades past. Detectives still revisit files, not because the case needs them, but because habits formed in pursuit of the unknown are hard to break. They read transcripts again, listened to recordings, and noticed details that were once invisible. Tones, pauses, the way a single word can carry the pressure of years. The contractor's account continues to be scrutinized, his statements compared against building schematics, old elevator logs, and witness recollections. Small inconsistencies that once felt inconsequential are now signals, guideposts in reconstructing what he cannot fully remember or admits he cannot explain. Each detail adds texture, a mosaic of events shaped by fear, routine, and impulse. Time has made the evidence fragile, but the pattern grows clearer. In the neighborhood where Aiko lived, some residents recall faint impressions long forgotten. A door slightly ajar, a shadow passing windows, a sound in the hallway dismissed as mundane. When investigators interview these residents now, the fog of memory lifts just enough to offer corroboration. Little threads that stitch together what was once a void. Ordinary life, once protective, becomes part of the truth. The family finds their grief evolving in tandem with public perception. Conversations in quiet spaces replace public acknowledgement. They visit sites connected to Aiko's final days. Each step measured, each memory rehearsed and yet unpredictable in its force. They speak of what they feel she might have experienced, of the ordinary life interrupted by something unthinkable. And in speaking aloud, they reclaim fragments of a story that had been held hostage by silence. Media coverage ebbs but never disappears entirely. Podcasts revisit the cold case. Academic papers cite the unusual nature of the delayed confession. Journalists debate ethics and timing. The contractor becomes both a symbol and a cautionary tale. The focus shifting from sensationalism to reflection on human behavior and institutional oversight. His life outside the walls of incarceration fades from view, while the story itself grows, woven into discussions about justice delayed and truth revealed. Detectives use the case to refine methodology. Training programs stress the importance of reviewing minor details, emphasizing that access, familiarity, and trust can mask opportunity. New technologies are integrated into old procedures, ensuring that digital cross-references and historical data analysis can uncover patterns previously lost. The 1999 investigation becomes part of the department's DNA, a benchmark, a lesson, a persistent reminder that no lead is too small to consider. Psychologists weigh in, examining the mind of a person who concealed intent for decades, the tension between remorse, denial, and exposure. Their analyses feed into law enforcement practices, victim support programs, and public understanding. The contractor's delayed confession is dissected academically as much as legally. The case a bridge between human behavior and procedural evolution. For the detectives, the emotional residue is unavoidable. They recall the nights of relentless paperwork, the quiet frustration, the feeling of walls closing in with unsolved questions. Yet there is also a sense of closure, fragile but real, the knowledge that persistence yielded results, that patience finally forced a hidden truth into light. The memory of Aiko, long suspended between life and absence, is now anchored by both confession and discovery, a tangible presence in the minds of those who pursued justice. The city itself absorbs the story in its own way, unspoken. Buildings are repurposed, neighborhoods redeveloped, life continues, but whispers of history remain in subtle echoes. A resident noticing a familiar face on a security tape from decades past. A conversation recalling the day the posters came down. A moment of reflection on how routine can hide both safety and danger. And somewhere in the intersection of memory and consequence, the cold case continues to teach its lessons, reminding everyone involved that even in silence, evidence accumulates, patterns endure, and eventually, truth has a way of speaking, however long it takes. The story of Tokyo 1999 has moved from rumor to record, from absence to account, from unresolved to a hauntingly complete narrative, lingering like a shadow over the city that bore witness. Even as the trial fades from headlines, the aftershocks of the Tokyo 1999 cold case ripple quietly through both the legal system and the city itself. Inside the department, detectives still walk the thin line between routine and vigilance, the old files never fully closed in memory. They review case notes from other cold cases with renewed intensity, cross-checking overlooked details, reconsidering what ordinary truly means in the context of a life interrupted. A lesson has been written in patience, persistence, and the danger of underestimating human behavior. The contractor sits in confinement, a life reduced to walls and schedules, yet the case does not end with him. His confession has been absorbed into the public record, dissected by analysts, psychologists, and criminologists. Every nuance of hesitation, every self-contradiction, every small detail of his narrative is catalogued, used as reference material for understanding delayed admissions, the psychology of concealment, and how years can bend memory without erasing culpability. The story exists now outside of him, a structure of evidence, testimony, and consequence. The family of Aiko navigates life in the shadow of their closure. Grief persists, but it is different from the anguish of uncertainty. They attend counseling, participate in support groups for families of missing persons, and sometimes speak publicly about their experiences, using their voice to guide reform in safety awareness and investigative procedures. They carry the knowledge that truth arrived too late, but it arrived nonetheless, a fact that both comforts and torments them. In the neighborhoods of 1999 Tokyo, subtle changes occur. Community safety meetings increase, landlords institute more rigorous after-hours protocols, and residents become quietly vigilant without fanfare. Ordinary routines are infused with awareness. The case becomes a cautionary tale whispered in training rooms, shared in departmental briefings, cited in articles and academic work, its legacy extending far beyond the immediate crime. Technological advances, too, are credited indirectly to the case. The methods used to re-examine old evidence, match degraded fibers, and validate long-forgotten logs influence procedures nationwide. Forensic software, archival analysis, and cross-referencing protocols evolve as a result. The contractor's delayed confession, combined with meticulous investigative reconstruction, demonstrates that truth does not require immediacy, only precision and persistence. The media continues to revisit the story, but now in context rather than shock. Documentaries, podcasts, and retrospective articles frame it as a convergence of patience, methodical detective work, and the human capacity to carry secrets for decades. The phrase "cold case solved" becomes almost synonymous with disciplined persistence rather than sudden revelation. Public memory reframes the narrative, valuing endurance and diligence over immediate sensation. For the detectives, the emotional imprint of the case remains. They recall walking the quiet streets near the building, imagining Aiko's last movements, piecing together the ordinary life she led, and the extraordinary violation that ended it. The memory is a guide, a warning, and a touchstone. Each new case is approached with the weight of history, an unspoken reminder that every small observation, every routine detail, can conceal profound truths. Psychologically, the contractor's delayed confession becomes a reference point for the study of guilt and concealment, a cautionary tale in law enforcement psychology and criminology. His words, though fragmented, reveal patterns of denial, panic, and self-preservation that help professionals understand how perpetrators can blend into normalcy for decades. The confession, incomplete yet undeniable, serves as a lens into human behavior under pressure and the long-term effects of hidden guilt. Even the city absorbs the story quietly, in ways that no headline can capture. Life continues, trains run, offices hum, streets bustle, but somewhere beneath the rhythm of daily Tokyo, a shadow remains, a memory of absence, of silence, and of the persistence of truth. The 1999 cold case is no longer merely a story of disappearance. It is a reminder etched into collective consciousness. Time delays accountability, but it cannot erase it. And in the quiet moments when the city sleeps under the neon glow of its streets, the detectives, the family, the community, and even those who read and remember, all carry a sense of unresolved vigilance, the awareness that ordinary life hides extraordinary stories, and that the past, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of returning to demand recognition. The Tokyo 1999 cold case, once silent and invisible, now resonates as a caution, a revelation, and a testament to the endurance of truth. Time does not undo what has been revealed. The contractor is now a permanent presence in the legal record, a symbol of decades-long concealment and the fragility of routine as cover for violence. In court, in reports, in textbooks, he exists not as a person but as a case study, a reminder that ordinary lives can mask extraordinary darkness. His confession, once shocking, becomes almost clinical in its repetition, cited for method, timing, and psychological implication, Yet the weight of it never truly lightens for those who live through the uncertainty. The family continues to navigate life shadowed by both memory and resolution. Every anniversary, every familiar street, every neighborhood landmark carries dual significance. A place of memory, a site of absence. They speak occasionally to journalists, but mostly they carry the story privately, integrating grief into the fabric of daily existence, allowing the past to shape them without allowing it to define every moment. Aiko's name is spoken aloud with reverence, a ritual of remembrance rather than mourning, a reclamation of life that was interrupted but never erased. Detectives reflect, sometimes quietly among themselves, on the years spent chasing fragments and shadows. They recall nights of meticulous note-taking, late phone calls, re-examined evidence, and the relentless search for patterns in what seemed like randomness. They understand now more than ever that patience, persistence, and attention to detail can transform silence into clarity, even decades later. Training sessions for new recruits feature the case prominently, emphasizing that no lead is too small, no routine too mundane, and no absence too long to ignore. The building where Aiko lived stands still in memory, even as it changes in reality. Tenants come and go, unaware of the shadows that once moved through its halls, of the secrets that lay hidden behind doors that appeared ordinary. The physical space returns to normal, but its history is permanently altered, carrying with it an invisible weight, a record of presence and absence that only a few will ever know. The city itself adapts. Policy changes emerge quietly, enhanced tenant safety protocols, improved maintenance record-keeping, more robust reporting mechanisms. The Tokyo 1999 cold case becomes an unseen influence, a precedent informing everyday security, shaping administrative decisions, influencing how ordinary systems can be leveraged to prevent extraordinary tragedy. In subtle ways, the case ensures that vigilance outlasts memory, that systems remember what humans sometimes forget. Public discourse continues, slowly transforming initial shock into reflection. Documentaries, podcasts, and books examine not only the crime but the social, psychological, and procedural dimensions of the investigation. The contractor's delayed confession is dissected as a psychological phenomenon, an illustration of guilt carried silently, of how secrecy can persist when the ordinary provides camouflage. The narrative evolves, from sensational headlines to enduring lessons about human behavior and institutional oversight. For the detectives, the emotional residue is unavoidable but tempered. They understand that justice is not instantaneous, that absence is not the same as erasure, and that perseverance can yield resolution long after hope seems impossible. The Tokyo 1999 cold case becomes part of departmental lore, a touchstone of endurance, method, and the limits of human oversight. They carry it forward quietly in procedures, in caution, in vigilance. And yet, despite resolution, a shadow remains. Silence has been broken, truth revealed, but the echo of those lost decades continues. The city moves on, the contractor fades into records, the family adjusts to life shaped by revelation. Yet the memory persists. Ordinary streets, ordinary routines, and ordinary lives remain haunted by extraordinary events, reminders that even in bustling Tokyo, secrets can linger until they demand to be heard. In the end, the Tokyo 1999 cold case is more than a solved mystery. It is a testament to patience, to the resilience of memory, and to the enduring power of truth. It demonstrates that time may obscure, but it cannot erase. That routine may protect, but it may also conceal. And that even decades later, silence can be shattered, leaving behind the undeniable imprint of both loss and justice. The city remembers quietly, the detectives carry the lessons, and the family preserves a name reclaimed from absence. Truth has arrived, slow but inexorable, and the reverberations will endure far longer than any headline ever could. Years pass, but the echo of the Tokyo 1999 cold case never fully fades. Streets bustle with neon and traffic, trains hum beneath the city, life unfolds in rhythms both mundane and urgent, yet beneath the ordinary the memory lingers, an invisible scar embedded in walls, in corners, in the whispers of residents who once passed by without noticing. For some it is a story of closure, for others a caution, a shadow, a reminder that absence is not always empty. The detectives who crack the case continue their work, their routines forever altered. They pause longer on details, notice what others dismiss, and carry the weight of lessons hard-earned. Each new missing person, each ambiguous report, is filtered through experience, sharpened by decades of watching silence conceal danger. In training sessions, they replay the case with recruits, not to sensationalize, but to instill vigilance, patience, and the discipline required when the ordinary hides the extraordinary. For the family, life moves in small increments of healing. Aiko's room, once frozen in memory, now houses objects that honor her rather than trap her story in absence. Friends, neighbors, and supporters keep her name alive, quietly in conversations, in small acts of remembrance. They live with the knowledge that the truth arrived too late to restore lost years, but early enough to claim justice, however partial. Their grief has deepened, sharpened, but also stabilized, a persistent echo, no longer a chaotic scream. The city itself has absorbed lessons from the case. Building regulations are amended, tenant awareness campaigns quietly take root, and law enforcement integrates new technology for historical case review. Tokyo moves forward, yet it remembers in infrastructure, in procedure, in the invisible vigilance of ordinary citizens. The cold case has become a ghost in the system, a measure of both human fallibility and human persistence. Academic studies continue to dissect the contractor's confession, the psychology of decades-long concealment, the convergence of routine, obsession, and panic. Analysts describe him as both anomaly and archetype, a man whose ordinary existence enabled extraordinary harm, a cautionary tale that teaches without dramatizing. His voice, once fragmented in interviews, is now distilled into lessons on motive, opportunity, and the fragile line between control and chaos. Public memory shifts again. The headlines fade, but the story persists in subtle ways, in conversations, in podcasts, in scholarly reference. The term Tokyo 1999 cold case becomes shorthand for delayed revelation, for justice deferred but not denied, for the haunting power of truth. People remember the shock, the confession, the decades-long silence, but also the diligence that finally ended it. At night, when neon reflections ripple across the streets, the city holds its quiet acknowledgement. Somewhere, a passerby glances at a building and senses the weight of unseen history. Somewhere, detectives reflect on patterns, intuition, and perseverance. Somewhere, Aiko's family pauses to speak her name, to honor the life that was lost, the mystery that endured, and the truth that finally emerged. The case has ended in court, in record, in procedure, but in memory it continues. The Tokyo 1999 cold case is no longer a mystery, yet it remains a shadow over the city, a testament to the persistence of silence, the inevitability of truth, and the haunting lesson that ordinary routines can conceal the extraordinary, until someone notices, until someone listens, until the years finally give way to revelation. And in that lingering shadow the story whispers. Time may hide, but it cannot erase. Absence may stretch for decades, but the truth always finds a way to speak. Decades later, the city has changed, but the shadow of 1999 lingers quietly in the corners of memory. Buildings have been rebuilt, neon signs replaced, streets widened, yet somewhere beneath the hum of Tokyo's ceaseless rhythm, the echo remains, a story of absence, obsession, and revelation woven into the city's pulse. Students of criminology still study it. Detectives still reference it. Ordinary citizens occasionally stumble upon it in documentaries or retrospectives, a reminder that silence can endure, but it never disappears entirely. The contractor's name survives in legal texts, in precedent, in discussions about confession, concealment, and the limits of time in delaying accountability. Scholars debate the psychology behind decades-long evasion, the morality of delayed truth, the ethics of confessions extracted after years. His face, once shocking on screens, has become almost abstract, an illustration of human failure and human persistence in seeking justice. For the family, memory becomes ritual. Aiko's story is retold quietly, privately, in letters, in photographs, in small gestures of remembrance. They participate in advocacy, awareness, and community programs to ensure that other families do not endure the same silence. Their lives carry the imprint of decades-long uncertainty, but they have learned to live alongside it, honoring her life while navigating their own. Detectives who work the case reflect on their careers with a tempered reverence for the lessons learned. They mentor, they teach, they caution. Small details matter. Absence does not equal erasure, and routine can conceal extraordinary darkness. The Tokyo 1999 cold case becomes a touchstone of experience, an enduring lesson in patience, diligence, and vigilance. The city itself absorbs the story in quiet ways. Policies change, protocols evolve, and what once was oversight becomes standard procedure. The case shapes the invisible architecture of safety, of investigation, of expectation. Ordinary systems, doors, logbooks, routine checks, carry the knowledge of what can be hidden behind them, of how human behavior bends perception. Public memory shifts subtly over the years. Headlines fade, but the essence of the story remains. The phrase cold case carries new weight. It is no longer only about mystery, disappearance, or sensational revelation. It is about endurance, patience, and the slow but inevitable arrival of truth. The Tokyo 1999 cold case is cited, analyzed, remembered, not as a story of failure, but as a testament to the persistence of justice. And in the quietest hours, long after cameras have gone and the city sleeps under its neon canopy, the story whispers still. It lives in corners, in reflections, in passing recognition of what was lost and finally found. It reminds everyone who knows it that time delays accountability, that ordinary routines can hide extraordinary actions, and that even decades later, silence cannot outlast truth. The Tokyo 1999 cold case is no longer merely history. It is a shadow, a caution, a legacy forever embedded in the pulse of the city and the consciousness of all who remember. Years stretch into decades, and yet the Tokyo 1999 cold case remains alive in ways that defy headlines and official closure. New generations of detectives study it, dissecting the painstaking methods used to reconstruct events long hidden. They trace the threads of evidence, the overlooked details, the subtle clues, learning that patience is as powerful as intuition, and that routine can hide both life and death. Each new recruit hears the story not as history, but as a lesson, a shadow that stretches into their own decisions, shaping instincts before cases even arise. The contractor, now entirely a figure of record, becomes a reference point in textbooks and lectures. His delayed confession is analyzed for its timing, for the psychology that allows concealment to persist, and for the procedural missteps that allowed years to pass before discovery. Legal scholars cite the case in discussions of delayed admissions, statutes of limitation, and the morality of justice long deferred. He exists less as a person than as a symbol, a dark echo in the study of human behavior and systemic oversight. In the city, the building where Aiko once lived is long gone, replaced by sleek towers and commercial space. Yet whispers of its history persist, carried by older residents, neighborhood lore, and casual remarks overheard in cafes and subway stations. Tourists see only modern glass and steel. Locals remember the absence, the silence, the way one life could vanish in plain sight. The memory has become a ghost woven into the urban landscape, unspoken but unmistakable to those who know. The family continues to honor Aiko, integrating remembrance into everyday life. Her story shapes decisions, conversations, and even the rhythm of their home. Annual gatherings mark her birthday, subtle acts of ritual connect them to a past that was once uncertain, and they participate in advocacy work to ensure that others are not forced to endure decades of unanswered questions. The pain of loss remains, but it has transformed, tempered by knowledge, by justice, and by remembrance. Law enforcement departments across Japan, influenced by the case, institutionalize lessons from 1999. Historical evidence is reviewed with greater rigor. Archival procedures are updated. Cold cases are approached with a combination of forensic science and persistent investigative instinct. The phrase Tokyo 1999 cold case becomes shorthand for both a triumph of persistence and a warning of what can happen when ordinary routines conceal extraordinary crimes. Media references continue decades later. Documentaries and podcasts explore it with nuance, reflecting on societal shifts, investigative evolution, and human psychology. The story no longer shocks, it teaches. It becomes part of collective memory, a reference point for understanding the intersection of human behavior, institutional limits, and the inexorable arrival of truth. Even younger generations, born long after the crime and confession, encounter the story as part of Tokyo's layered cultural consciousness. And still the city hums, vibrant and indifferent, as though nothing has changed. Yet beneath the noise of trains and neon, Beneath the patterns of routine life, the echo of 1999 endures. It is felt in the careful watchfulness of neighbors, in the meticulous habits of building managers, in the persistent, patient work of detectives who know that silence, no matter how long, cannot outlast truth. The Tokyo 1999 cold case has passed from moment to moment into legend, a shadow in the city's heart, a reminder that ordinary lives can conceal extraordinary darkness, and that the light of truth, when it arrives, changes everything it touches. Decades have passed. Tokyo has transformed beyond recognition. Glass towers reflect neon skies, autonomous vehicles hum through streets, and a new generation moves through the city unaware of the ghosts that still linger. Yet the memory of 1999 persists, quietly embedded in the routines, in the shadows of old neighborhoods, in whispered recollections of those who lived through it. The cold case has become legend, a story told in law schools, criminology seminars, and quiet conversations in cafes, not for shock, but for the lesson it carries. Time can hide truth, but it cannot erase it. Detectives long retired recount the case to new officers, their voices heavy with the weight of experience. They describe the ordinary events that concealed extraordinary acts, the logs, the maintenance records, the tiny details that were overlooked for years. They speak of patience as a weapon, diligence as a shield, and silence as something that can be broken if enough people refuse to ignore it. Trainees listen, some skeptical, others awed, realizing that even in a city as meticulously organized as Tokyo, shadows of the past can persist beneath the veneer of order. The family's story continues generations later. Aiko's name is spoken in classrooms, memorial gatherings, and advocacy circles. Her memory shapes the values of descendants, instilling vigilance, empathy, and a sense of justice tempered by patience. Letters, photographs, and artifacts of her life are preserved as part of a quiet cultural archive, a testament to resilience, memory, and the power of truth to reclaim what was lost. Loss, once raw, has become a legacy. The contractor, long confined, is now a figure entirely of record. His confession, his life, and his crime have merged into an abstraction, used as study material in psychology, law, and criminology. Analysts dissect his delayed admission, the psychology of concealment, the consequences of ordinary routines shielding extraordinary actions. He is no longer a man but a case study, a cautionary shadow, a symbol that lingers in classrooms and police stations alike. The city itself carries the imprint. Infrastructure, security procedures, community awareness programs, and investigative protocols have all been shaped by the lessons of 1999. Ordinary routines are now punctuated with vigilance. Minor irregularities are treated as potential signals. Buildings, streets, neighborhoods, once silent witnesses, now carry institutional memory. The Tokyo 1999 cold case, though decades old, actively informs the safety and conscience of the city. Even in the digital age where information moves faster than thought, the story persists. Podcasts revisit it, VR reconstructions allow new generations to explore its events, and archives make the case accessible globally. The narrative is no longer just about one life lost, one crime concealed, or one confession delayed. It is about vigilance, persistence, the consequences of oversight, and the enduring need for truth. And yet, despite resolution and study, a shadow remains. Ordinary life continues, trains run, neon blurs streak across streets, conversations hum in cafes. But beneath the city's rhythm, beneath the pulse of modern Tokyo, the echo of 1999 endures. It is felt in subtle vigilance, in cautious awareness, in the quiet insistence that what was hidden must always be remembered. Time cannot erase absence. Silence cannot outlast truth. And the lessons of that night, of that cold case, remain. The extraordinary hides in the ordinary, the past reaches into the present, and justice, however delayed, leaves a mark that cannot fade. The Tokyo 1999 cold case has passed into legend. It is a shadow over the city, a caution in every investigation, a whisper in every memory. It is a story of persistence, of endurance, of the inevitability of truth. And as the neon lights flicker over streets bustling with new lives, the memory persists, silently demanding recognition, quietly shaping the world in ways the city itself will never fully know. A century has passed, yet the story of the Tokyo 1999 cold case whispers through the corridors of memory. The city is unrecognizable. Towers scrape skies once unseen, holographic signage pulses over streets, and generations move through urban grids built atop invisible layers of history. Yet beneath the brilliance of progress, the shadow of 1999 endures. It is no longer a news story, no longer a headline, but a legend, a case study, a cautionary tale repeated in forensic simulations, law school lectures, and storytelling exercises designed to remind those who investigate that ordinary life can conceal extraordinary darkness. Detectives long gone are remembered as part of a lineage of vigilance. Their methods, painstaking reconstruction, meticulous evidence review, patient interrogation, have been digitized, analyzed, and codified. Every recruit now begins training with the lessons of 1999 encoded into software simulations, VR reconstructions, and historical reenactments. The cold case becomes less a story of a crime than a template for understanding human behavior, deception, and the fragility of assumptions. Aiko's memory has become cultural lore. Her name is preserved in public memorials, literary references, and online archives that allow her story to transcend time. Descendants of her family continue to honor her, speaking of her not as a victim lost, but as a figure whose story shapes conscience, vigilance, and empathy for generations they will never meet. Her absence, once raw, now resonates as a guiding presence in a world forever altered by the consequences of silence and revelation. The contractor exists only in archival simulations and psychological case studies. His confession, his concealment, his decades of secrecy are analyzed repeatedly to understand the mechanics of guilt and human concealment. He has become less a man than a shadow, a cautionary tale embedded in forensic, legal, and psychological education. His life is no longer a story of shock, but a persistent lesson about the limits of human oversight. The city itself bears the imprint of 1999, woven into its systems, culture, and consciousness. Emergency protocols, tenant oversight, digital monitoring, and public awareness campaigns all trace their lineage to lessons learned from a crime once hidden in plain sight. Tokyo moves forward, endlessly reinventing itself, yet the echoes of that cold case remain, reminding everyone that even in brilliance and order, shadows can persist, and truth, no matter how delayed, will eventually find its way. Even centuries later, in quiet reflections, the story persists. It inhabits archival systems, lecture halls, virtual reality simulations, and the collective imagination. The Tokyo 1999 cold case has become immortalized, not as a scandal, but as a story of endurance, vigilance, and the relentless arrival of truth. Its legacy is a whisper in the pulse of the city, a shadow that stretches across generations, a reminder that absence cannot outlast memory, and that even the ordinary can hide the extraordinary. And somewhere in the rhythm of Tokyo, the story still speaks, silent, unyielding, unavoidable, reminding all who would listen that history never forgets, that time does not absolve, and that the past, no matter how distant, can always demand recognition. Centuries have passed. Tokyo exists now as a city of memory and illusion, a labyrinth of neon and holograms, of histories folded into glass towers and virtual streets. Yet the story of 1999 survives, a shadow in the consciousness of the city itself. It is no longer merely a cold case. It has become legend, part of the collective mythology of justice, absence, and revelation. Children hear it in VR simulations as a cautionary tale. Scholars dissect it as a study of human concealment. Artists depict it in neon murals, and musicians echo its rhythm in haunting compositions. Aiko's name, once whispered in grief, resonates now like a mantra, a symbol of absence reclaimed by truth. The contractor, long gone, is neither feared nor sensationalized. He is studied. His actions are mapped, analyzed, simulated, replayed endlessly in educational programs, virtual reconstructions, and forensic simulations. The lessons of concealment, remorse, and delayed confession are immortalized in law, psychology, and civic consciousness. What once shocked a city now instructs generations, teaching vigilance in every corner of life. Detectives, long vanished into memory, live on as archetypes in simulations and institutional lore. Their meticulous work, their obsession with detail, their patience, is encoded in AI-assisted investigations, shaping how crimes are analyzed centuries later. The Tokyo 1999 cold case has become a blueprint for understanding not just crime, but human behavior, secrecy, and the fragile interplay of ordinary life and extraordinary events. The city itself remembers. Streets hum with the echoes of lives that passed through them, and skyscrapers stand like silent witnesses to a past that no law or technology can fully erase. Ordinary life is never entirely ordinary again. The story has permanently altered the perception of routine, making citizens hyper-aware of shadows, of absences, of details that may otherwise seem inconsequential. And in the quietest hours, when the city sleeps beneath its artificial sky, the story speaks again. It whispers to those who will listen that absence is never empty, that silence is never final, and that even centuries later, truth finds its way. The Tokyo 1999 cold case has become more than a story. It is a shadow, a warning, a lesson, a ghost, and a legacy. An eternal pulse in the heart of the city that refuses to forget. Millennia have passed. Tokyo exists now as an intersection of memory, simulation, and reality. A city built upon layers of history preserved digitally, holographically, culturally. The story of the 1999 cold case has transcended time. It is no longer a crime, no longer a case, but a symbol, a parable of absence, truth, and the endurance of memory. Scholars of human behavior, urban planners, and storytellers alike invoke it as a lesson. Even the smallest detail, the most ordinary routine, can conceal the extraordinary, and silence, however long, cannot outlast revelation. Aiko's name echoes still, carried in virtual memorials, AI-generated oral histories, and digital archives accessible to anyone across the globe. She is remembered not as a victim frozen in fear, but as a figure who reshaped understanding, a life whose absence produced vigilance, empathy, and systemic change that reverberated through generations. Her story has become timeless, a moral compass for humanity's collective memory. The contractor exists only in records, now abstracted into simulations, psychological models, and legal case studies. His confession, once shocking, is now analyzed as part of humanity's historical archive, a study of secrecy, guilt, and the extraordinary patience of both perpetrators and investigators. He is a shadow without form, a symbol of what ordinary life can conceal, and of how truth ultimately cannot be suppressed. Detectives, long gone as individuals, live on as archetypes in training systems, simulations, and AI-assisted analysis programs. Every procedural manual, every lesson plan, every virtual reenactment references their persistence, their patience, their obsessive attention to detail. The Tokyo 1999 cold case has become a cornerstone of investigative methodology, a legend encoded into the collective consciousness of law enforcement across time. The city itself, rebuilt, reimagined, layered across centuries, remembers. Streets, towers, and digital overlays carry the invisible residue of history. Citizens, or their AI-mediated descendants, move through Tokyo aware of shadows and absences, instinctively cautious of patterns, understanding that ordinary life may conceal extraordinary acts. Even in a future of unimaginable technology, the lesson endures. Vigilance is timeless, observation is eternal, and truth, however delayed, always finds a way. And still, in the quietest moments of the city's hum, the faint pulse of history beneath neon and hologram, the story whispers. It is a shadow, a pulse, a memory that refuses to fade. It teaches that time cannot erase absence, that silence cannot outlast revelation, and that even centuries, millennia later, the echo of truth can shape lives, systems, and societies. The Tokyo 1999 cold case has become immortal, no longer just a crime, but a legend, a permanent, spectral presence in the heart of a city that will never forget. Time has become irrelevant. Tokyo exists now as a living archive, a city layered with data, memory, and history, where human life is one thread among billions of patterns. The 1999 cold case persists as more than story. It is embedded in the city's very consciousness, a pulse of truth that echoes across centuries, millennia, and digital landscapes. It teaches quietly that absence cannot last forever, that concealment is temporary, and that every secret, no matter how deeply buried, eventually leaves a mark. Aiko's life, once cut short, now transcends mortality. Her name exists in virtual memorials, AI simulations, cultural memory, and even in urban design. A subtle imprint guiding decisions, shaping awareness, influencing the invisible architecture of the city. She is no longer merely remembered. She has become an enduring symbol of vigilance, memory, and the persistence of truth. The contractor has long faded from flesh and mind, yet his shadow remains as a warning encoded in psychological models, AI analyses, and historical simulations. Every deception, every concealment, every hesitation he carried becomes data, guiding future generations, human and post-human, about the consequences of secrecy and the inevitability of truth. Detectives, too, exist now as archetypes in simulations, their methods codified and perfected. Training programs spanning centuries cite the 1999 case as a masterclass in observation, patience, and reconstruction. Every detail, from overlooked evidence to minor behavioral cues, is preserved as lessons for generations who may never walk the streets of Tokyo as humans do. The city hums with memory, neon, and light, yet beneath its rhythm flows the invisible imprint of 1999. Even in a future incomprehensible to the humans who once lived it, the pulse of that cold case shapes vigilance, awareness, and justice. Ordinary life may change, civilizations may rise and fall, but the echo remains. Absence does not erase truth, silence cannot suppress it, and even centuries later, the lessons of one night in Tokyo shape worlds. And so the Tokyo 1999 cold case continues, not as news, not as crime, not as story, but as an eternal force embedded in memory, data, and consciousness. Aiko's life, the investigation, the confession, the lessons, they ripple across time, unseen yet undeniable, a spectral heartbeat of vigilance that will endure as long as the city exists. Truth has become immortal, and memory, once fragile, now guides the flow of generations, leaving a permanent mark on the heart of Tokyo, on the soul of justice, and on the pulse of history itself.